But why would I make you sit here and listen to how many cubits wide the tabernacle is going to be? The tabernacle hasn't been around for thousands of years. Does anyone really care about that anymore? Well, maybe the Hebrews did, but now at this point... What's that? Okay, anyway. So, you've got these scriptures that talk about how big these buildings are, and how these buildings are supposed to be built. Now, from my point of view, I'd say that they didn't put this building stuff in the Bible for no reason. No author ever writes anything down in the book for no reason. A title always has a meaning. A word always has a meaning. So, before we get deep into building information, everyone should have a picture near them, or someone near them should have a picture that I gave out. If everyone has one close and they can look at, each side has a different picture, so don't cross this line here. I'm going to talk to this side first. So your picture. Okay, I might have lied to you a little bit. You might have to talk a little bit. Give me a couple describing words that you would say describe that picture. Destruction. Okay, that's a good one. Left arrow. Rubble. Grief. That's a good one. So destruction, grief, rubble. It looks war-torn, right?
You have trouble with your baby guy?
What?
You have trouble with your baby guy?
Yeah. Okay, so this picture, it's pretty clear that this picture it's not a good scene, right? So let's talk to this side now. What do you guys see in your picture? Couple words that you would say describe that picture.
City.
Cities, cars, towering. Looks like a pretty wealthy neighborhood, all right? Looks pretty happy. These people look happy. They probably have a car, probably a couple shops in the basement of these buildings. You see a church in the background. So it's a pretty big contrast, right? This is war-torn and torn up, and this is happy. So would it be a surprise for me to tell you that this is actually, if it fit on the screen a little bit better, this is actually the same picture. This is 60 years apart. It's the same place, okay? It's taken from the exact same place almost. Now, what am I trying to get at by showing you two pictures, one of the 1940s in France, and this is actually the city of Caen, and one of 2010 Caen in France? What I'm trying to get at is humans can change. We've changed. We've fixed this. We can change. It took us 60 or 70 years to go from the picture on the left to the picture on the right. So it can happen. We can end conflict. Let's move on to this picture here. Does anyone know where this is? Okay, so we all know this picture, right? We know where this picture is. Okay, it's the Eiffel Tower. It's in Paris, France. This is Paris about 250 years ago. This is during the couple of battles that happened through Paris during the wars of like Prussian secession and stuff. And this is Paris today. It's a big change, right? People in France have fixed it. They're not fighting each other in France, in Paris anymore. They've moved on to a more, I hasten to say, civilized environment. What about this one? Do we know where this one is?
Big Ben.
Big Ben. It's in London, England, right? Big Ben, it's London, it's in the United Kingdom. This is London, not London, but this is England 1,000 years ago. This is the wars that the English fought with the Scottish. One of the bloodiest times in English history. And this is northern England today. Big change, right? Big change between cavalry killing each other and an ice cream pasture with some sheep in the background. Anyone know where this is? India, okay. That's about my knowledge of it too. I couldn't name the city that it was in, but it's in India, okay? It's actually in the town of Agra, India. This is the war in India about 500 to 600 years ago during the end of the Mughal dynasty. A lot of war and destruction happened in India. And this is northern India today, in the same areas that this fighting happened, okay? There's a big difference, even in India. Now let's get to something that you might not know. Does anyone know where this building is? It might not be the best picture because it's in a pretty densely developed town, but does anyone know where this building is? Or what this building is? Not the Tower of London, not quite. This is actually the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is in the Old City of Jerusalem. This is considered by many Christians to be one of the most holy places in Christendom. This is Jerusalem 1,000 years ago. After the Crusaders conquered it, they came from Europe and pretty much slaughtered the entire population of Jerusalem. And this is Israel, northern Israel, just 10 to 20 years ago, during the Arab and Israeli wars that happened, Yom Kippur and the 7 Years' War. So what's the difference here? There's not much difference between 1,000 years ago and 20 years ago in Israel, okay? How about this one? I don't expect you to know this one, so. Okay, this is actually one of the, it's the most pristine, most well-preserved castles in the Middle East. It's Crusader architecture, but it's still Middle Eastern. It's called the Krak Shavile. It's in Assad-controlled Syria right now. This is Syria 1,000 years ago during the wars that happened between Christians and Muslims. And this is Syria today. Not much has changed. The weapons have changed and the people have changed, but yet they're still fighting each other. How about this one?
This could be Iran.
Iran is close. That's a good guess.
Iraq.
Iraq is also good. Turkey's good. But this is actually the Muhammad Al-Amin Mosque. It's in Beirut, Lebanon. Same place, Middle East. This is the attack that the European Knights did against Lebanon 1,000 years ago. A lot of killing happened, a lot of fighting happened. And this is what Lebanon looks like 20 to 30 years ago during fighting that happened through the streets of Beirut. So what am I getting at with these pictures? This is a bunch of buildings. No one cares about buildings. That passage from the Bible, that was boring, let's be honest. Okay, no one cares about the goat skin that they used to make the tabernacle. But I think it's important to realize how we're supposed to solve problems in the world. A couple weeks ago, Wes talked about how the church is a family and the church is supposed to work to help each other solve problems. And he said, I'm pretty sure he quoted, and he said that you don't have to go out of these doors to find problems and people that we can help. But the church is also, in my opinion, supposed to be a global community. We're supposed to help everyone around the world. One of the most problem-heavy spots in the world right now is definitely the Middle East. I think we can all agree on that, that if you turn on the news, CNN or Fox, whichever one you want to watch, and you look at the headlines for a couple minutes, you're going to see something about the Middle East somewhere. And I think that to better understand those problems, you have to look at the history first. You have to look at the history of these places. We know the history of France. We know the history of England, and you see the change that can happen. Maybe we've learned from our mistakes. Maybe we've learned what humans used to do, and now that we don't anymore, and now it looks much better. Maybe, since we're one of the most powerful countries in the world right now, we should learn a little bit of history about the Middle East. We can shoot as many missiles or drop as many bombs as we want to in the Middle East, and I don't think it's going to stop the problems. It's not going to solve the problems no matter what you do. It's going to take more than killing people to solve problems. To better illustrate my point a little bit more, there was a class that I was in 2 years ago in Morgantown High School. It was called Human Geography. The teacher asked us, name a country in the Middle East. And the student in front of me put her hand up and she said, Africa. Now, that's funny, and you might think, well, that girl needs to look at a map a bit more, but I think it illustrates what a lot of Americans know. They don't know much about the Middle East. I don't think many people in here at all would know the history of the rise of Islam and the fighting in the Crusades. It's just an era of history we brush over. Maybe, in my opinion, we should look at that more. Maybe we should think about what happened just 1,000 years ago. We know the history that Mary read earlier about Solomon building the temple and the tabernacle, but that's long, long ago. Maybe that history is important, but maybe it's not the most important that we can look at. So maybe we should look at more of this 1,000 years ago history. Maybe that's the ticket to solving the problems in the Middle East. Now, I'm not saying that's the only thing that's going to solve problems in the Middle East, and it definitely isn't. But maybe as America, maybe we owe it to the rest of the world to learn a little bit about the history of the area before we start, I don't know, bombing it or shooting missiles at it. Because maybe we've spent 50 years doing that. Maybe that's not working. I'm getting there. Give me a second. Sorry. Okay, maybe I'll just recap while I try to think about what I was going to say next. Why did I choose buildings? Why did I choose buildings to look at? Because when people build buildings, they show you what they were thinking at the time. They show you how they felt. They build into the architecture of the building how they felt at the time. And buildings stay there for years and years and years. Some of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, it was finished in 669 AD. So that's a long time ago. That's over 1,000 years ago. That building's been there in pretty much the same state it is right now. And like I said before, people come and go, but history always stays. Buildings stay. And I focused on buildings today because, as with everything, it relates back to school in my life right now, but I read a book in school. It was called The Templars. Now that's an old military organization associated with the Crusaders. And I didn't like the title of that book. I didn't like the title. I thought it should have been called The History of the Crusades, or The History of the Middle East from 1099 to 1291. So that's a little bit more specific, but... And as I read that book, I'd see these names, and I'd see these names of these places that it was referencing. I have no idea where they are. I've taken multiple history classes, and I'm sure you all have too, but I was clueless. I was completely clueless as these places they were talking about, and the importance of these figures that they were talking about. These people, these leaders, these places, these rivers. But yet that's one of the most problem-heavy places in the world. We know nothing about it. We can say that we know some about it. We can turn on BBC America and watch a documentary about it, but I don't think we're really going to understand much about it until we look at the deeper history of it. And maybe...
You have to look at it like in the history.
Exactly.
You have to,
exactly. She's saying you have to look at the history before you're going to be able to understand the problems of today. And maybe, since Wes said we're a church that solves global problems, maybe we should make that a goal of ours, to learn a little bit of history. In our Sunday school class, the youth Sunday school, we've learned that we've come to know that Wes is not a history person. Believe me, Wes is not a history person. He gave us a vote in the beginning of the year to vote on what we were going to learn about. We all voted for history, and that must have made him so unhappy because he took those sheets and he went away. He came back the next week, he's like, okay, I guess we're going to do history. So that's what we've been doing, and we've bumbled our way, I say, through 500 to 600 years of church history. And it's been fun, but maybe we should look at that not in just the youth class. While the youth are the people who are going to solve the problems of tomorrow, we're not solving the problems of today. So maybe if we all of us in the church, maybe pay a little bit more attention to history and maybe a little bit less attention to what's happening with our own lives, or maybe, I don't know, I hasten to say with what's really close to us, but like global history, maybe we can start to solve the global problems of the world today.